Mass layoffs are coming. Despite what you see in the media about the job rates, despite what you see about unemployment rates, despite what you see about the jobs reports that are being put out on a monthly basis, I want to warn you and I want to prepare you for the reality that mass layoffs are coming. If you thought that the worst of layoffs occurred at the height of the medical health emergency that this country and ultimately the world went through, I want to declare to you that you haven't seen anything yet. I'm convinced that we need to prepare ourselves. We need to be ready. We need to understand what is coming. And I feel an imperative and a responsibility to you who would watch this video to get yourselves ready for mass layoffs that are coming. Don't think that the industry that you are in is somehow going to be exempt from these layoffs. Don't think that because you're not a white-collar worker or because you're not a blue-collar worker that you are somehow going to be exempt. I'm convinced that these layoffs are going to affect blue-collar workers as well as white-collar workers. I'm convinced that there are going to be major corporations and major companies that are going to introduce staggering amounts of layoffs. And even if you have received a job offer recently, even if you have somehow been given a contract position, I'm convinced that what we are seeing is the calm before the storm. When I left my position at First Republic Bank at the end of October of 2021, I had a gnawing feeling that something big was coming. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I couldn't shake it. It wouldn't let me go. Prior to me leaving my position at First Republic Bank, which by the way I had for 5 years, I read the book The Creature of Jekyll Island. The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. It is an understatement to say that this book radically altered the way that I was thinking. I began reading this book and devouring it, and I began looking at every sector of our country in a drastically different manner. And I would strongly recommend anyone who is watching this video to read this book. This book by G. Edward Griffin will completely and utterly alter the way that you think and will open your eyes to a lot of things that you hadn't even thought of before. And I'm convinced that it is a must read. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, I knew that First Republic was next. Lo and behold, the bank was brought into receivership by the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and its assets were sold to JP Morgan Chase and Company. I could have never seen all of this coming, but lo and behold, it happened. Last week, 1,000 First Republic Bank employees were informed that they were being let go. Some of these I even know personally. In April of 2023, this year, PNC announced that it would close 30 branches while JP Morgan Chase and Company intends on closing 25% of the First Republic offices by the end of this year. Wells Fargo plans to close an additional 17 branches in 12 states. With the recent interest rate increases by the Federal Reserve System, banks are not lending like they used to, and clients simply aren't borrowing as they used to. Reserve capitals are going to be depleted. People are going to dip into their savings. Businesses are going to dip into their savings. Their employees are going to be dip into their savings if they have savings, and they are going to see themselves going through it in a rapid succession and at a much quicker rate than they had even anticipated. The quickest and easiest way for businesses to cut costs is through mass layoffs. Elon Musk recently spoke of the collapse of corporate real estate, and New York real estate mogul Barbara Corcoran echoed this sentiment and said that roughly 50% of the office space in New York City was being used. Eventually, office spaces are going to become obsolete and no longer needed, and there are only going to be one of two options that companies are going to have to choose from. Either resort to fully remote work if their business model affords it, or artificial intelligence. If you are one of the fortunate ones to have not been laid off during this time, consider yourself both fortunate and blessed, but not out of the water. Some of those who are going to be the hardest hit during the upcoming layoffs are going to be white-collar workers. According to the Wall Street Journal, big tech is going to see massive layoffs. Google said in January it plans to eliminate 12,000 jobs, while Amazon said it plans to eliminate 9,000 jobs after it had already announced that it was going to cut 18,000 jobs. The Walt Disney Company plans to cut 7,000 jobs, while Meta, which is the parent company for both Facebook and Instagram, plans to eliminate 10,000 jobs. Microsoft said it would lay off 10,000 employees, while Salesforce planned on cutting 10% of its workforce. In the financial sector, BlackRock planned on laying off roughly 3% of its total workforce, while BNY Mellon plans on cutting 3% of its workforce, which equates to roughly 1,500 jobs lost. Goldman Sachs is preparing for a third round of layoffs in less than a year after it eliminated 3,200 jobs in January. In the retail industry, Best Buy stated it was cutting hundreds of jobs across the United States, while FedEx said that it was laying off more than 10% of its workforce. Here's what we are seeing even in our economy right now. We are seeing large retail conglomerates closing their stores en masse. We are seeing Bath and Body Works close down their stores, and as a result, people are going to be losing their jobs. We are seeing McDonald's even close its location. We are seeing a lot of these stores, even Disney itself is closing stores, and when it is all said and done, Disney may only have roughly 23 stores nationwide. This is going to affect people all across the spectrum, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the northern part of our country to the southern part of our country, and we need to be prepared for it. One thing I also want to make you aware of is the introduction of what's called a social credit score. For those of you who don't know what a social credit score is, I want to preface this by saying up until now, you've been able to open a credit card, take out a loan, get a mortgage on a home, all based on what's called your FICO score. This score is basically determining your credit worthiness and your ability to repay whatever loan you are interested in getting. In recent months, we have seen the Federal Reserve gradually increase the interest rates in our country, and each time in succession they have increased it by 25 basis points. As a result of this, banks and financial institutions are no longer lending like they used to, nor will they in the future. Consumers, those who would previously want to go to big banks for loans and for lines of credits, are no longer going to be borrowing this. What is going to happen is this is paving the way, and this is setting the stage for a social credit score. And a social credit score, this is directly connected to the ESG movement. This is directly connected to what I would call social democracy. How you function and how you fit into culture and society. When once you would be able to get a loan or line of credit based on your FICO score, you will now be able to get a loan or be rejected for a loan based on your social credit score. In a later video, I'm going to describe what the social credit score is and how it is going to impact our country, and I want to prepare you for the fact that social credit is on its way and in some respects is already here in our country. And your ability to take out a loan, your ability to open a credit card, your ability to bank with a certain financial institution, what type of checking account you have, the type of job and employment you are going to be able to have is all going to be based on this social credit system. This is a system that is going to be largely enforced through surveillance. This is going to be a system that is going to be largely enforced by the government. There are countless videos on YouTube and on other social media platforms such as Rumble and Epoch TV that describe this in full, and I am one of many voices that are going to talk about this. But I want to prepare you. I want to prepare you for the fact that layoffs are coming. It makes no difference whether you are a white-collar worker, whether you are making 6 figures, whether you are making 5 figures. It makes no difference whether you work in the retail industry or whether you work in the banking industry. We are seeing the tech bubble burst, and this is introducing artificial intelligence. This is what is going to cause the boom in artificial intelligence, because the major tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Meta, all of these companies, these major tech companies, are all trying to corner the market on artificial intelligence, and it has become an arms race. And it is artificial intelligence that is going to creep into the industry. It is going to creep into our economy, and it is going to displace a lot of individuals, and a lot of jobs are going to be lost, because what formerly required flesh and bone, what formerly required men and women to do, is now going to be automated, is now going to be streamlined and mainlined, and the jobs that were once performed by men and women are no longer going to be performed by them. What does all this have to do with you? I want to encourage you to prepare now, to plan now. I want to encourage you to amass and to begin putting money aside and to build up a savings. I would encourage you to start small. So start 1 month savings, but ultimately I would say build up at least 3 months or 6 months. A full year's worth of savings is ultimately ideal. I want to encourage you to begin to build up a safety net, to begin to position yourself to where you will no longer need to rely should you lose your job, but you have a safety net. I want to encourage you to pay off and eliminate your debt. This country relies on debt to function. That's why the debt ceiling debate has been such a hot topic in recent weeks. This country relies on debt to function, but you do not. You do not need debt to function. You do not need debt to be a citizen in this country. And I want to encourage you, if you have the means, pay off your debt. If you have the ability to both build up a savings and pay off your debt at the same time, I would encourage you to do so. In addition to building a savings, in addition to paying off your debt, I would also recommend stocking up things that are going to be essential. During the medical emergency that this country saw in the past couple of years, you saw items that were not on the shelves. Items that we once took for granted and once thought were going to actually be on our shelves were no longer there. Toilet paper, paper towel, tissues, baby formula. Some of these essential items, toothpaste, bars of soap that we thought were going to be in abundance were no longer there. The supply chain found itself being crunched because of the medical emergency that came upon this country. I want to encourage you in your planning and in your preparing to begin to stock up on supplies. Begin to stock up on your toilet paper. Begin to stock up on your paper towel. Begin to stock up on your toiletries. Begin to stock up on Band-Aids. Begin to stock up on things that are needed to survive. Now, you might be watching this video and thinking that I am absolutely crazy. You might be thinking that I have absolutely lost my mind and that there is absolutely no need for anyone in their right mind to even remotely go into what I would call preparation mode. However, I want to remind you of where we were in just a year or two ago when we found ourselves standing in lines outside of grocery stores, found ourselves standing in line outside of our local Walmart or our local Target. And this is even something that we are seeing why these particular retail giants and the movement that they're pushing is because there are people who are looking to boycott these companies, and some of them are going to do so at their own detriment because the items that they need are typically found in these stores. I want to encourage you to plan and prepare. I want to encourage you to stock up on the essential items. If you had the ability to stock up on seeds, I would encourage you to stock up on seeds. If you are one who wants to stock up and store food, I personally have a year's worth of food that I have. I have bottled water that would last me roughly about a year stored and stocked up. I believe that something is coming. We are about to head into dark and dangerous days. We are about to enter days when the freedoms and the liberties that we once thought we were going to have are no longer going to be there, and we are going to find it beginning with mass layoffs. We are going to find it beginning with those things that we once took for granted. If you are employed right now, start planning, start preparing. Do not take for granted that you have a job right now. Do not take for granted that you are bringing in a paycheck. If you are a single parent, I would encourage you and I would implore you to plan and prepare. If you right now are living paycheck to paycheck and you are beginning to feel the pinch and the squeeze, I would encourage you to begin to prepare as best as you can right now. I would encourage you to foster community, to get yourself involved in relationships, to build communities. One of the greatest things that was missing during recent years was community, because we were isolated. We were forced to separate ourselves from one another. We were forced to distance ourselves from one another. We were forced to quarantine in our homes, and as a result, community suffered the greatest. I want to encourage you to get yourself involved in a community. Surround yourself with men and women and families and parents who you know you can trust and rely upon. Build a network of people who you both know and trust and who you respect, because one of the greatest commodities that we are going to have in the upcoming days is going to be each other. This is why the division in our country is so chaotic and why it is so important, because if we can be divided from one another, then it is a means of us not being able to rely on one another, us not being able to actually be involved with one another in terms of community. I want to encourage you to take this time and truly prepare yourself for the days that are coming. Do not be one who relies on financial institutions. Do not be one who relies on social media. Do not be one that relies on the government. Do not be one that relies on these large retail chains and these essential stores such as Target or Walmart, or these pharmacies such as CVS and Walgreens. Use them right now. Stock up on what you need right now. Plan and prepare right now, because we are entering into days and we are entering into a time when you are going to need to be prepared, and only those who are going to be prepared are going to be able to truly stand in the midst of this time. Finally, I want to encourage you to be one who clings to faith, one who holds fast to faith. I believe that in addition to community, the greatest commodity, the greatest asset that we can have in these coming days is faith. And it is a faith in Judeo-Christian values. It is a faith in the living God. It is a faith in Jesus Christ. And if you are one watching this video and you do not have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, I want to tell you that that is the single greatest asset, the single greatest commodity that you can have during the coming days. This video is drastically different from any other video that I've done before. This video is most likely not going to have some of the same pictures, some of the same slides that I normally do, because there is an urgency in this video. And I want you to prepare yourself. I want you to be ready for what is coming. If you need help at all in preparing yourself for the days that are coming, feel free to reach out to me directly. Leave a comment. I will find ways to connect with you so that we can rely on each other, so that we can be a community of people. I want to leave you with an example from the Old Testament book of Genesis. Joseph was a man who was wrongly accused by the government. He was wrongly accused by the government and he was imprisoned. And it was during his time in prison, after roughly a little over 2 years, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had a dream. And it was one dream, but he dreamt it twice. And in the dream, he saw 7 fat cows that were consumed by 7 lean cows, or 7 scrawny cows. He dreamed again 7 hefty stalks of grain, and then he saw 7 smaller, feeble stalks of grain, and he couldn't understand what the dream meant. And finally, there was one of his own who remembered that Joseph had interpreted his dream, and here was the interpretation of the dream. There was going to be 7 years of famine that was going to come upon the land. But before the 7 years of famine were going to come upon the land, there was going to be 7 years of plenty. There was going to be 7 years of provision, 7 years of abundance. And not only did Joseph provide the interpretation of the dream, but Joseph also provided wisdom. Joseph also provided advice, and that was simply to plan and prepare, to stock up, to store up, to take a tenth of the abundance of the land during those 7 years and put it aside. Put it in storehouses, so that way when the 7 years of famine came, they were ready. They weren't caught off guard. You might be one who you might have been one who's lost a lot of money as a result of the stock market right now. Even in relation to the job that you have, you may find yourself having lost a lot of money in your stock. And I would encourage you right now to be one who puts aside, one who plans, one who prepares. I want to encourage you to be those who, like Joseph, encouraged Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the most powerful ruler of that day, to plan and prepare. I'm telling you, there are going to be dark and dangerous days that are going to be coming ahead. There are going to be greater riots in the streets. There are going to be greater thefts, greater looting. What we saw in the past couple of years is going to pale in comparison to what we are going to see. What we have seen with stores being broken into and windows being smashed and theft taking place in our stores, what we have seen in recent months and recent years is going to pale in comparison to what is coming in the days ahead. Prepare now, plan now, get your house in order, get yourself ready, be a man and or a woman who has faith, who has courage, a man or a woman who is able to stand in the coming days. Feel free to like this message. Feel free to share this message. Feel free to get this message to as many people as you can. And I believe that we are going to be able to weather the storm that is coming if we foster community with ourselves, if we foster our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, if we retain our faith in the living God, and if we give ourselves wholly and completely to Him, we will find ourselves being able to stand and withstand anything that comes our way. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you all again in my next video.